The number one question that I always get asked, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, is where do I find my samples from? Where did I find that bass patch? Where did I find that stab? Where do I go looking for my vocals for tracks? And seeing as I'm halfway through making my own sample pack, I thought it'd be a good time to kind of go through and tell you where I get my sounds from. So I've been producing for quite a while, and I've built a sample library on my hard drive over the last 20 years, and they've all come from various different places, and I thought in this video I'd go over just some of those places where I get my sounds from. When I first started collecting samples, I used to get them from CDs, so it might be from the front of a magazine, or I might go into an actual shop and buy a physical CD. Now you don't obviously get that anymore, it's all samples online, but that's what I used to do when I used to get all my samples. So CDs like this one, Houseworks by Moose T. This one probably cost me around about £50–60 when it first came out. I bought that and I used that for so long. And in fact, I mean, this is an audio CD, so literally all the samples are just one after the other, and you'd have to rip them onto your hard drive or into a sampler or wherever you wanted to use them. And literally this is sitting on my hard drive, so I had this physical copy just in case, but all the samples I've ripped from this sample CD and I've put on my hard drive. And I've just got a whole collection of these CDs that I've kind of collected over the years. I've even got like floppy disks. So if you're not even sure what a floppy disk is, this is what we used to store stuff on, and it stores a ridiculously small amount of things on. But this has got like a whole load of MIDI files, for example. So this has got a whole load of big beat MIDI files, a whole load of drum beats, bass melodies and things like that on it. They were really handy at the time. Got a whole load of like just samples that I've backed up over the years. Various different CDs that I bought from eBay or wherever, just different things. Like this is a CD full of Rhodes samples. So these are all ones that I've just kind of collected over the years. They've just been ones that I've bought when I've needed them. So if I've needed some Rhodes samples, for example, I've headed over to eBay or I've gone out to a shop and I bought a CD. Obviously, as samples start to move online, it just made it so much easier, and over time I just bought so many different sample packs. I've got samples from Loopmasters, from Sample Magic. There used to be a website called Sounds to Sample, which is now Beatport Sounds. So there's lots of different websites that I used to download stuff from, and I've probably got around 60, 70, 80 packs on my hard drive just that I've collected through the years just like that. And now obviously we're moving on to the more modern kind of websites, and I'm a big fan of Splice.com. I get a lot of stuff through there. When I go and get samples, I'm going from stuff that's 20 years old right up until Splice. So and I might use a combination of that stuff. So I might use a beat from the Moose T CD, or some drums or something from that, and then I might go onto Splice and get a stab from there. The whole point is trying to mix it up a little bit and try and find your sounds from different sources. That's kind of what I like doing. But I'm also a massive fan of sample digging. So at the moment, obviously, there's a lot of kind of genres that are coming back in. That lo-fi kind of sounds coming really back in again, and a lot of people are going onto Splice or Loopmasters or whatever and buying the latest sample packs that allow you to get that kind of sound, that kind of more raw sound. What you can do is be a bit more creative about this, and rather than getting a brand new pack that makes it sound like back in the 90s, why not get a 90s sample pack? And that's what I've been doing for years. I'm always hitting Amazon or eBay or whatever and finding old sample packs. Now, anybody who was producing or started to produce in the 90s on like really simple software, so say for example, there used to be a bit of software called EJ, which was this really horrible, simple music making software, but it kind of got a lot of us kind of producers into that. There was also a piece of software on the PlayStation 1 called Music 2000, I think it was. Lots of really simple bits of music production software that were out in the 90s that we could kind of get our teeth into. And I kind of got this, I kind of got this idea that the fact that these samples must still be out there. This software was made in the 90s, or late 90s. So you got all those kind of sounds that you're looking for, that kind of time period, and they're royalty free. So I went on eBay and I started buying up CDs like this. So this is an EJ sample CD. So this is a collection of samples that were used for EJ. And this is a 4 CD collection. So you got 4 CDs worth of sounds within here. And I was buying these up really cheap. Like, you could find these for, you know, £2-3 or whatever like that. And there's just tons of samples on here. Now, bearing in mind you're buying old sample CDs, they're not all going to be fantastic, and in fact most of it is pretty terrible, but you might find some really interesting stuff in there. And I'm not going to tell you which tracks that I got vocals from, but some of my tracks have actually got vocal samples from these EJ CDs. I've been creative with them. I've kind of pitched them down, or I've pitched them up. I put effects on them and stuff, but you know, some of those vocals have come from those CDs, so they've been really useful. Yeah, that's definitely my kind of trick, is to kind of go sample hunting. So the main place that I go for that is Amazon or eBay. So it's quite easy just to type in things like EJ, for example. EJ was, as I said, there was the software that we used to use, and there's just so many different ways to buy that. So you can buy that off Amazon or eBay. And it's really cheap as well. I mean, we can see here we've got this thing called EJ Legends, and that's what, £5 for the PC. Now this includes the software, but you're obviously not going to use that. On these CDs, they actually have the WAV files, the actual samples, so you don't need to use the software. You can actually just take the samples straight off the CD. So there's a whole load of these sample CDs, and I'm always hitting when I'm feeling a bit lost for kind of creativity, or if I'm trying to find, you know, some new sounds or whatever like that. I feel my library's a bit stale, or I'm a bit bored of using the sounds that I'm using. I hit Amazon, I hit eBay, and I just find these kind of really random CDs. And if you do your research, if you have a look at some of the sample CDs that were released in the 90s, you'll probably find a lot of these on eBay and on Amazon. Now, some of them can be really expensive. Some of the original sample CDs, like the Moose T CD, this can still go for £40-50. I don't know whether it's a collector's item, but some of them go for quite a bit of money. So you've got to kind of shop around and see what you can find. And as you're not buying on a sample website, you can't preview any of the sounds. All you can do is just buy the CD and hope for the best. But you know, if you buy a CD which has got, you know, 10,000 samples on, and you find 5 on there that's good for £5, well, that's, you know, that's one track, you know, and that's something you wouldn't have had before. So that's where I go getting a lot of my sounds from. Now, that's not the only place that I go to get my samples. I absolutely love Splice.com, and I'm a paid up member of that. I think it's fantastic, and it's also one of the easiest ways that you can find samples, because their browsing and their searching is fantastic. Being able to kind of search by a key is fantastic. If you've got a track that's about 70%, 80% done, but you're looking for that key sample, then you can just go onto Splice.com, search by key, and then find that stab or that vocal that you've been looking for. And I think it's fantastic like that. Also, if you hit the random feature on it as well, so if you sort the list of your results as random, then you're less likely to find something that other people would have, and you might even find something from another genre that works. So something that nobody else would normally use, you might just find that. And that's one thing you don't get from just buying sample packs. If you buy a sample pack, then you'll buy a sample pack in your genre. But if you're on Splice.com and you're searching up, then you're just looking for individual samples, and they could come from any genre. So quite often I'll be using maybe a trap sound or a hip hop sound in my house tracks, not because I want to use the sound of that genre, but because it's come up and it sounds good, and I'm not listening to it thinking I want to use a hip hop sound, or I want to use a trap sound. I'm just hearing the sound and I want to use it. And that's one of the things I love most about Splice. And finally, there's obviously hardware. Now, I've got some hardware here. I generally do most of my stuff in the box. I got my Roland TR-8S, which I use quite a bit for drum sounds. It's got all the kind of modelled Roland drum machines in there, so I use a lot of stuff from there. I've also got a Yamaha keyboard, which is kind of it's more of a kind of electronic keyboard. So you got your Rhodesy kind of sounds, your Wurlitzers, things like that out of it. So I kind of use that a lot for some of my keys. But generally a lot of my stuff comes from software and from samples. So that's a really long answer to a short question, but that's the whole point of it. I have got a massive collection of samples, and I kind of go all over the place to get the sounds that I want. and one day I might head to splice.com and get most of my samples from that. Another day I might go into my hard drive and find a whole load of old samples that are just littered amongst there. Or I might even get away from the computer and just go to my CDs and just go through some of them and see what I can find, some stuff that's really old, and I might just find something in there that I missed before. So that's the whole point of it. I kind of do a lot of sample digging, and I kind of look in multiple different sources to try and find the sounds that I want to for my tracks. But believe me, the more time you spend doing that, when you find those samples that just make the track, that's what makes it magic. So I hope that's answered the question. As I say, I kind of go to multiple different places for my samples, so hopefully something in this video might have actually helped you. You might get an idea as to where you can go to get your sounds and make your tracks unique. If you like the video, hit the like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, because I've got a whole load of stuff on there, a whole load of video content, tutorials, things like that. I'm always doing these videos, so check out the channel and see some other stuff that I've got there.